Hey guys, my first time was here. So I decided to do an old story that I made a long time ago. I felt that was a little rushed, and there's a lot of errors in the old one. So I rewrote it and made a new one. And now I feel like I can actually have the courage to show you guys what it actually is. So I hope you guys enjoy. The night wind was cold against the wings of a lone, dark stallion that silently flew above the free forest. He didn't fully recognize the landscape around him, especially now that there were more trees than there used to be, and new hills, and they weren't there before. But his heart led the way as if nothing changed, though his heart said that the very thing making this flight was so difficult. Swearing to himself that the way he felt, his chest was weighing him down, and not only worsened when he drew even closer to his destination. Whatever that was left of that is. Regardless, he pressed on into the night. This mission wasn't one he could keep his gaze hidden from any longer, and refused to let these feelings deter his wings. He had to face it once and for all if he was to truly accept new reality and begin on the path to healing and proper adjustment. Besides, he owed them this at least for what they had done. He only been to Camelot for a year now since his return. Yet he knew that he had to keep them waiting much longer, and that they needed to speak with them rather than keep them in prayer. However, he could never feel his nerves start to unravel at the sight of them ahead of him, making him slow down to take in and process the cracks formed in his heart as he took in the sight a little longer. The old castle of the Royal Point Sisters. It was in ruins. The once proud city that had once been filled with color and life was now a broken shadow of the past, slowly being overflown by the ever-advanced foreigners in time. Many of the castle's almighty towers had grown old and brittle. They were made to collapse and on themselves, or stand broken with scars of the past. Still attempting to remain vigilant, despite having no pony to guard, evident by all the fallen and even missing old homes that used to surround the castle. Once beautiful shades of pinks, whites, and purples are now long faded into dark pigments of grays and blacks, with nearly the entirety of the upper levels completely caved in within itself, exposing what he had knew was the old remains of the main halls and throne room. Prince Linian slowly pitched himself down and carefully landed onto what was once a stone path, now broken up and scattered by the grass and dirt, making sure not to make such a sound as his hooves lightly clipped against the ground, as if worried he disturbed the surrounding silence more than he already had by being there. He swallowed hard as he stared up at the disheveled buildings around him, feeling the weight of his shame and guilt on his back as he struggled to move his hooves in the right direction towards what was once the castle gardens, and made his way through the thick brush and tangled vines towards the back. There would have been greeted with a statue of three tribes of faceless ponies, clad in armor that resembled the ones he used to wear thousands of years ago. A muscular and strong-looking Earth pony stood boldly in a pose that suggested that turning towards an enemy. A more elegant yet brave unicorn standing on the other side, and their head turned down to point their horn towards to cast a spell. And lastly, a fierce Pegasus reared up with his wings sprouted out proudly in between them, as if to take flight into the night sky above. However, the statue represented and honored the ponies that fought and sacrificed for Equestria, was now much more like its surroundings, broken and overtaken by the danger around them. Yet they still stood together, as if refusing to fall to the other two had not. Seeing this, Selenian couldn't help but find himself in conflict once more as he walked by the sight. He could still feel that old sense of pride that the three continued to show, an everlasting display of loyalty and perseverance of the old army. Yet, because of this situation, he couldn't help but feel as if the three were watching him in judgment as he drew closer to the old building behind them. The entrance was the especially brought in state such as the rest of the old castle. However, much of the walls of the first level managed to remain standing despite growing vines having attempted to grow all over the old oak doors and walls. The Pegasus Stallion stood there for what felt like a few more years, staring past the vines and leaves that barred his way to the door that led right into the catacombs, before he shook his head free from upsetting thoughts and reared up to yank away the vines with his hooves. The brittle vines snapped without much resistance under his hooves, giving him easy access to the old rotten oak doors that had clinged to for so long. Years of weather and wind had also made the once sturdy wood look shriveled and delicate. Patterns that were carved into it have been long since faded and been obscured as the ages went on. Not wishing for any more damage to years ago, after his father began to change into the monster he was. He carefully pressed a hoof against the wood and slowly pressed against it. The old door creaked and groaned as it opened on rusted hinges. Dust and frail bits of the door fell over him as he peered over into the ever-expanding darkness ahead of him, which felt to stare right back at him. He truly had nothing to be afraid of within those tunnels, other than the possibility that it might give way. But the darkness ahead of him made his chest tighten as harsh memories began to creep back into the forefront of his mind, making it hard to breathe as his legs began to lock in place. Before the memories could fully settle, Selenian shut his eyes tightly and shook his head once more, quickly raising and stomping a hoof against the old stone with a snore of frustration, before glaring into the darkness as if to challenge it. He reminded himself that he was free from the crystal heart and his father's fermenting spell, that the guardians of the elements and their dragon had liberated the land as of his cruelty, and so there was nothing to fear within darkness. Having come unprepared due to his rushing means to get this over with, Selenian took one of the old torches that was placed against the wall and set it to the ground and began skinning his hoof on the stone near it. his horseshoe causing enough spark to catch the old wood alight. After using his wings to gently fan the flame to life, he took up the torch with his mouth and began to carefully descend the old stone stairs and make his way through the old tunnels. He only been inside the catacombs once, yet he could remember walking alongside her again as he accompanied her all those years ago, as if it only happened yesterday. Laying past Hoof's steps to guide his own as her voice echoed in his head. Many of the rooms were just storage for old furniture or items, either for common use or for special occasions. However, that wasn't what he was there for. Or rather, he walked past all the rooms and just simply continued on until he finally found the room he was been looking for, the crypt. His teeth began to grip into the old wood that was in his mouth as he started onward into the large room. His heart lurched forward out of his tiny chest as he saw the rows upon rows of stone coffins. Coffins containing the sleeping souls of soldiers past with the old equestrian flag tied at their sides. But this time, there were far more in the room than there were since the last time he was there. Selenian shut his eyes tightly, pulling in his nerves once more, then willed himself to enter the room and began to read the old nameplates. Harvey recognized the ponies he'd fought alongside in that war, but none were the names, and he both hoped and dreaded to see. Soon enough, he found them all together in the same row. The very sight of it made his legs weak as a frigid sensation washed over him as he reread the names before him over and over. Golden Arrow. May the sun warm her heart and guide her path to everlasting peace. Midnight Flash. May the moon heal his pain and lay him to everlasting peace. Sundancer. May the sun warm his heart and guide his path to everlasting peace. Scarlet Shimmer. May the moon heal her pain and lay her to everlasting peace. As tears began to flood over, he slowly propped the old torch onto a rusted holder and let himself down onto the ground in front of them. His legs grew too weak from the overpowering grief. Tucked his legs underneath himself, looked up to the stone coffins. No, the four closest friends he'd ever made during his time within the castle. Even now, he could still hear Scarlet's loud, infectious laughter as Midnight told his best stories. He could still remember the words to nearly all the songs to Sundancer that sung for them to brighten the mood. Most of all, he could still see beautiful, shining gold with golden arrow eyes, warm and full of fire and life. These precious memories that still rang true in his heart drew out a chuckle past his sorrow that he thought of their last conversation together before the final battle took place. I surely pray that none of you have to remain here in hopes to see me and hear those words, he began, choking back a sob. He took a moment to gather up his strength and swallow before continuing. Though I must admit, a part of me truly hopes you have I maybe told you that I was correct in my predictions. He laughed, the hot tears continuing to flow as he tried to keep his voice staying clear. Have I? not promise you that you will have full lives after the battle, and do many wonderful things. My Aunt Princess Celestia had told me all of your great deeds to her and Princess Luna in the years after, and I could never have been more proud of them, declare you all my closest friends. He raised the ring slightly to his face and used it to wipe an eye dry as took a deep breath, finally collecting himself to continue on. I have so much new knowledge of this modern life that was so made possible, and thanks to you sacrifices and work to share with you, but I have very little time. It is realized that I am not home. I saw a report all I can tonight in our short time and come back with more stories. The report he did, allowing himself to remain there in that place for the next few hours, continuing his mourn, his friends, and tell them all the wonders of the new modern world. He debated with himself if this was even necessary, knowing he possibly spoke to nothing but dust and bones lying within those caskets. Yet it still felt like they were very still with him, very much so.